Hi there, church family, and Merry Christmas, which is only a couple of days away now. This is our final Wednesday night devotional time for you to enjoy with your family. We pray that you will use these videos as a chance to reflect on the important things that Christmas is all about. We've talked about lots of things over the past several Sundays and Wednesdays about the meaning of Christmas, about the meaning of King Jesus being born into this world. We've talked about giving and receiving gifts. We've talked about light. We've talked about the presence of God with us. We've talked about rest. And we've talked about peace. In this short devotional, we're going to talk a little bit more about the peace of God that we receive through the gift of King Jesus. Now, the video we're going to watch this evening is a commercial from a few years ago that retells a story about the beginning of World War I. In those early months, the British and German soldiers were fighting along the borders of France and Belgium, and they were fighting in these trenches that were dug out, oftentimes only a few hundred feet apart. Well, in that first Christmas during the World War I time frame, the British and German soldiers acted out a sort of informal truce. They didn't shoot at each other in the Christmas season. They decided to celebrate Christmas together. So I want you to watch this video and see one retelling of how this first Christmas during World War I took place.
Jenkins, Oakley. Night.
Traute hochheilige Paar, Holy Infant, so happy and love, sleep in hellish peace.
Ein Blitzer kommt! Ein Blitzer kommt!
Jim? Jim! Don't do it!
Halt! Er ist nicht bewaffnet! Nein, Otto!
Jim!
My name is Jim.
Mein Name ist Otto.
Pleased to meet you, Otto.
Freut mich.
Rose, she's called.
Ist schön. Ist schön. Danke.
Happy Christmas.
Frohe Weihnachten.
Let's look at a passage together that forces us to think deeply about peace, especially the peace that we receive from Jesus. This is found in Colossians chapter 1, starting in verse 19. God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in Jesus, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. But now he has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy in his sight, without blemish and free from accusation. If you continue in your faith, established and firm, and do not move from the hope held out in the gospel. Now, this passage was written by the Apostle Paul, who earlier in his life had actually been a Jesus hater and then became a Jesus follower. He knew how much had been given to him in being able to make peace with God through the life and death and resurrection of Jesus. And he spent the rest of his life telling others about that same opportunity they had through the life and death and resurrection of Jesus. Paul wants for us to get a few things out of this passage that I want us to focus on now. God dwelled fully in Jesus and was pleased to make peace with all things through Jesus' life and death and resurrection. Through the willing sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross, things that were at odds with God now had peace with God. Now, Paul doesn't dance around the point either in this passage. Once we were alienated from God, we were even enemies of God because of our evil behavior. That's pretty scary. Enemies of God? Now, according to the dictionary definition, to be an enemy means you are literally seeking to harm or overthrow someone. So if we were God's enemies, that means we were trying to overthrow God. We were trying to bring him harm. It doesn't just mean that we didn't like God and we didn't like the things that he does. It means that we were trying to bring him pain and loss. Kind of like those soldiers were supposed to do when they were fighting against each other in World War I. But because of Jesus, we are not God's enemies anymore. Peace has been made between us and God because of Jesus. So instead of being enemies, God now pours out his love for us. He doesn't accuse us or condemn us. He shows us through Jesus how much he loves us. Now we are freed to live in step with God instead of in rebellion against him. Now, these last few weeks, we've watched 3 different commercials that are showing us different things about the Christmas season. In the first commercial, you might remember that you learned that the Christmas season is about giving and receiving gifts. We're just following God's lead on that because we celebrate the greatest gift ever given at Christmas, the birth of Jesus. In the second commercial, we learned about how Christmas is all about light, especially light in darkness. When things don't look good, when we can't see because of the darkness of the world, we remember that Jesus is the light of the world. And the message that we talked about today is that no matter what's going on, we are reconciled to God through the peace we receive through King Jesus. Now, how can you take the peace of God that you have been given and share that with those in the world around you? What are ways that you saw in that video that showed you small opportunities, small ways that you could treat others and show them the peace of God that they received through Jesus? Now, as we wrap up this final Christmas devotional, I encourage you to reflect on the different things we've talked about that are the meanings of Christmas. And maybe there's some others you've thought of along the way that are different from the ones we've talked about. Take some time tonight with your family, with your friends, whoever's watching this with you, and talk about those different things that Christmas means to you. And whoever you are watching this with, or even if you're watching it all alone, take time now to thank God for the peace that you share with him through Jesus. Thank him for all the blessings that you have received from the fact that Jesus, his Son and our King, has come to show us the love of God. Merry Christmas.